I'm sorry my ex-boyfriend came back for me. We're not getting married today. That was the entire phone call. One breezy sentence from my fiancée May. And then she hung up. And just like that, I became the joke of the entire Civil Affairs Bureau. The second time, same building, same woman, same ex-boyfriend who only ever remembered he wanted her back on the exact morning I tried to marry her. I stood there in my best suit holding a wilting bouquet and a ticket with our number on it while a whole room of strangers watched me realize I'd been left at the altar again. They didn't even bother to whisper. That's the guy who got stood up. No, I heard it's the second time. Look, he's still holding the flowers. Some of them look sorry for me. Some were fighting not to laugh. Pity is the worst kind of spotlight there is. I set the bouquet on the counter because I didn't know what to do with my hands anymore. And I thought very calmly about walking out that door and never stopping. Then a voice behind me spoke. Flat, cool, like she was ordering a coffee. Then marry me. I turned around. She was maybe 32 in a charcoal coat that probably cost more than my car. Dark purple hair cut short and sharp. Dark eyes behind a pair of glasses. She pushed up her nose while she looked me over head to toe like I was a line item on a spreadsheet. She didn't look heartbroken. She didn't look lost. She looked like a woman who'd already made her decision and was just waiting for me to catch up. I have my household register with me, she said. Do you have yours? I did. It was still in my bag, right next to the vows I'd handwritten the night before. Why? I asked. Does it matter? Her eyes dropped to the ticket in my hand. You've waited long enough. 10 minutes later, I had a wife. The certificate came out of the machine, still warm, red as a hot coal, and it sat in my palm like a branding iron. Mrs. Song, it read next to a name I'd known for a total of 11 minutes. Shun Land. Shin, same family name as me. I noticed it and thought nothing of it. Half the city goes by Shun. I was in no state to be connecting dots. We ended up in the noodle shop across the street because neither of us had the faintest idea what people are supposed to do after something like that. She ordered for both of us without asking and got my order exactly right down to the extra chili. I was too hollowed out to wonder how a total stranger knew that. I've wondered plenty since. There's a man my family wants me to marry, she said, turning her teacup a slow quarter turn. No tears, no trembling, just stating it like a weather forecast. It was never about me, only about what two families are worth stacked together. The day a better number comes along, they'll trade me for it without blinking. I didn't know what to say to that, so I gave her the truth instead. Second time for me, I said. Same guy both times. Both times the morning of. She went quiet. Something moved behind her glasses there, then gone. May always did throw away the good ones, she said softly. I hadn't told her the name. I swear some small buried part of me heard how wrong that was. But my head that night was a burned out house, and I let the thought drift off like smoke through a broken window. She's just being kind, I told myself. People say things I thought a stranger had saved me. I was wrong about the stranger part. She could have gone anywhere. She had the means. I didn't know that then, but she did. Instead, she looked at me and said nothing. And I did the only thing I could think of. I brought her home. My place was a half-paid 2-bedroom on the edge of the city. Nothing special, but it was the only thing left in the world that was still mine. I gave her the master bedroom, the one with the balcony and the good light, and told her I'd take the small room. Told her she had nothing to be afraid of with me. She just nodded like she'd expected exactly that. And somehow, being trusted by a woman I'd known 3 hours cracked loose something in my chest I'd been clenching shut all day. Near midnight, my phone lit up the ceiling. May, don't be angry. Let me sort things out here and I'll come back for you. Wait for me. No apology. No question mark. Just an instruction tossed down to the dog she kept on a leash. The one who always came running when she called. For 5 years, I always had. I stared at that message until the words went blurry. Then I deleted her. The number, the photos. 5 years of messages. The little heart next to her name gone one tap at a time until there was nothing left of her on my phone at all. And for the first time all day, I could actually breathe. I was nearly asleep on the small bed when I heard her voice through the wall low on the phone with someone. It's done, she said. A pause. No, he has no idea who I am. Good. Keep it that way. Another pause. And then quieter. Not cold at all this time. Almost amused. Almost pleased. My sister never could tell treasure from trash. Her loss. I'm not giving him back. I told myself I'd misheard. That grief makes people say strange things in the dark. I hadn't misheard. And whoever she was, she hadn't come to that registry to get married. She'd come for me. I was woken up by the smell of food. Not takeout. Not that flat cardboard smell I was used to. Something warm and real. Millet porridge and fried eggs. And underneath it, the faint sweetness of green onion hitting a hot pan. I walked out of the second bedroom and stopped in the doorway. Lon was standing at my stove in my oversized company t-shirt, the sleeves swallowing her hands, her purple hair still loose from sleep. Morning light was coming through the kitchen window and settling across her shoulders like it had nowhere better to be. She heard my footsteps and turned around. "You're up. Sit down. It's almost ready." There were 2 plates on my table. Millet porridge, thick and fragrant, with 2 fried eggs on the side, yolks golden, edges laced with green onion. Steaming hot. I live on convenience store buns eaten on the subway. A breakfast like this was a luxury I'd stopped expecting. I sat down and didn't say anything for a moment because I didn't trust what would come out. "I wasn't sure of your taste," she said, setting the porridge in front of me. So, I kept it simple. "It's perfect," I said, and it was. The first mouthful sent warmth straight through me, the kind that reaches your bones and does something to the frozen parts. Everything that had happened the day before was still there, sitting heavy in my chest. But for 1 minute in my own kitchen, it was quiet. "You cook like this every morning?" I asked. She paused just barely. "I used to cook a lot for a long time." She didn't say for whom. I didn't ask. I got to the office and knew immediately that everyone already knew. It's the way a room changes when you walk in. The conversations that stop a beat too late. The eyes that slide away just a second after they land on you. A few of my colleagues had gathered near the printer and scattered the moment I came through the door, which told me everything. John was the only one who came straight at me. He pulled me into the corridor with the look of a man delivering bad news at a funeral. "Senior Kai," he said carefully. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." He blinked. He'd been expecting something else. Tears maybe, or the 1,000-yard stare of a man who'd spent the night falling apart. I hadn't. The night felt like a long time ago. "May is too much," he said, shaking his head. Twice the same move twice. People from the registry were talking. It's all over the neighborhood group chats. "You've become a joke." "I got married," I said. June's mouth stopped moving. "What?" Yesterday after she called, he stared at me like I told him I'd grown a second head. "To who?" "You weren't crazy from the shock, were you?" "To a woman who was also there yesterday. We both needed a way out of something. We figured it out." I went back to my desk and left him standing in the corridor with his jaw still working. For the rest of the day, I buried myself in whatever was on my screen. I could feel the stares tracking me from across the room, curious now, not just pitying, and I ignored all of them. Let them talk. I'd already stopped caring what version of my life they were telling each other. I came home to the smell of dinner. She had used what was left in my refrigerator, which wasn't much, and turned it into 3 dishes and a soup. The table was set. The flat, which I usually left in the quiet disorder of a man living alone, looked like someone actually lived in it. "You emptied my fridge," I said. The corner of her mouth moved. "Your fridge was tragic. We'll fix that." We ate together, and for the first time since the registry, I felt my shoulders come down from around my ears. We talked about small things, my work, a film she'd watched, the strange little hardware shop on the corner of the street. Nothing that mattered. All of it comfortable. She laughed once properly at something I said. And it caught me off guard because it didn't match the cold, precise woman who'd sized me up over a laminated marriage certificate the day before. There were layers to her I hadn't started counting yet. After dinner, I washed the dishes and she dried them beside me. And at some point, she glanced through the doorway at my study. "You have stock analysis software open," she said. "I dabble. Nothing serious." She sat down the dish towel and walked to the study doorway, looked at the screen for a few seconds, head slightly tilted, glasses catching the light. "I used to work in financial analysis," she said. "If you don't mind, I'd like to take a look." I minded so little I pulled out the chair for her. She sat down and started moving through the interface like she'd built it herself, fast, unhesitating, pulling up data I hadn't known how to find. After a few minutes, she leaned back and said nothing for a while. Then my phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but it kept ringing stubborn and shrill. So, I stepped into the hallway. Who do you think you are? May's voice hit me the moment I picked up sharp. Hi, incredulous. You blocked me. You actually blocked me. I told you to wait. We're done, May. Done. She laughed. And it wasn't a good sound. You don't get to decide that. I said I was coming back. You're supposed to wait. That's how this works. Not anymore. A silence. Then her voice dropped into something colder and more deliberate than the shouting. Going to regret this, Kai. I promise you that. You just wait. The call cut off. I stood in the hallway for a moment. Through the half-open study door, I could hear Lan's voice low, clipped, a handful of words in a tone I hadn't heard her use before. Calm, but commanding. The way you speak when you expect to be obeyed. I walked back in. She had set her phone face down on the desk and was looking at the screen, one finger resting against her lips as if she'd been there the whole time. Everything okay? She asked without turning around. Fine, I said. Work stuff, she nodded slowly. Then she pointed at the portfolio on screen. Sell all of this tomorrow morning before 9 o'clock. I frowned. These are performing well. I was planning to hold them. She pushed her glasses up and looked at me over the rims with an expression that didn't invite argument. Trust me. I didn't know her well enough to trust her. I sold anyway. And for a long time afterward, I couldn't explain why. I sold everything before 9 o'clock like she told me to. Didn't know why I did it anyway. The day passed without incident. I went to work, kept my head down, let June fill me in on which version of my story the office had settled on. Apparently, I'd either had a breakdown or a revenge scheme. Nobody could agree which. I didn't correct them. I came home in the evening to the smell of dinner, and for one fragile moment, it felt like maybe the worst was behind me. Then I turned the corner to my building and saw May. She was standing at the entrance in a white coat and full makeup. Heels on the pavement, arms folded, not waiting, performing. She'd arranged herself the way she always did when she wanted an audience, and she had one. 2 neighbors from the 3rd floor, a woman walking her dog, and the security guard who'd clearly already decided this was the most interesting shift he did all year. She saw me and came forward immediately, so it's true. Her voice was a blade dressed up as a laugh. You really went and found some substitute. Song Kai, I swear the lengths you'll go to just to make me feel guilty. May, I kept walking. Go home. She grabbed my arm. Her nails found the gap between my sleeve and skin, and I stopped. Not because it hurt, but because I could feel the whole street watching. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Where is she? I want to see this woman you married in 48 hours. I want to see the face of the person you used to try to pressure me. No one is pressuring you. I said, I married someone, that's all. It has nothing to do with you. She let out a sound that was half laugh, half disbelief. It has everything to do with me. You're mine, Kai. You've always been mine. You don't get to just leave. The lobby door opened. Lon walked out with a garbage bag in one hand, bare-faced, hair loose, wearing the white home clothes she changed into every evening. No makeup, no performance. She stopped when she saw us, assessed the situation in roughly 1 second and walked calmly to the trash can at the side of the entrance. May's eyes found her like a missile finding heat. Oh, the word came out slow and deliberate. The way she sharpens things before she throws them. So that's her. She looked Lon over the way you'd inspect something you'd found stuck to your shoe. Kai, come on. This is the best you could do. She looks like she just rolled out of bed. Lon dropped the bag into the trash can, turned around, and looked at May the way you'd look at rain. Something that was happening and would stop eventually without requiring your opinion. A substitute, Lon said. Her voice was perfectly level. I'm Mrs. Song by law. I'd watch the next word carefully if I were you. She tilted her head slightly. Now, is there something you'd actually like to say to my husband, or were you planning to stand on his doorstep all evening making noise? May's mouth opened, closed. The composure she'd walked in with developed a visible crack. I stepped forward and put myself between them. I looked her straight in the face, something I used to avoid, something I no longer had any reason to fear. Don't come here again. Don't call. Don't send messages from unknown numbers. We are done. And my wife is not something you get to have an opinion about. Do you understand me? May stared at me like I was a stranger wearing my own face. And then she looked past my shoulder, one more attempt to go through me to get to Lon. And that was when it happened. She went still, not the theatrical still of someone performing shock. Something deeper, a stillness that started behind the eyes and drained down through the rest of her. Her face, which had been sharp and loud this whole time, went entirely blank. And then in a voice I had never heard from her before, small, unsteady, nothing like herself. Lan Jia. The words meant older sister. I heard them. I heard them. And I heard Lan go quiet behind me. And the entire world seemed to take one long, slow breath. I turned around. Lan was looking at May. Her expression was unreadable. Not cold, not warm, not surprised. The expression of someone watching something play out exactly as expected. She said nothing. She didn't deny it. I looked back at May at the blood that had left her face. At the recognition in her eyes, the kind that couldn't be undone. And then I understood. May's sister, her older sister, the woman I'd married in 10 minutes at the Civil Affairs Bureau. The stranger who'd walked up behind me and changed everything was May's own sister. She had known my name before I told her. She had known how I took my food. She had said May always did throw away the good ones, like she had a front row seat to my entire relationship because she was standing inside the whole time. May looked between the two of us and her face cycled through things I didn't have names for. Shock, fury, something that might have been the beginning of fear. She left without another word, her heels sharp and uneven against the pavement for the first time. The sound of someone retreating instead of arriving. The door clicked shut behind her. Lon and I stood in the lobby and didn't speak. I had 100 questions and nowhere to start. She knew it. She turned toward the elevator. Calm as still water. Come eat, she said simply. Dinner's getting cold. In the elevator, I said, sorry, I should have handled her before it got to this. She looked straight ahead at the doors. You handled it fine. A pause. So did I. I followed her. But upstairs, while she moved around the kitchen and served the food and poured the tea, I thought about the overheard phone call from the first night. My sister never could tell treasure from trash. She'd known who I was from the very beginning, and I still had no idea who she was. I checked my phone during my lunch break the next day. The stocks I'd sold that morning, the ones I'd been planning to hold because they were performing well. The ones I'd only sold because a woman I'd known 3 days told me to, with a look that didn't invite questions, had spiked briefly after the open and then collapsed, not dipped, collapsed. A straight line down that was still going when I was staring at it. If I had waited one more hour, I would have lost more than I made in 3 months. I sat at my desk and the noise of the office went very far away. This wasn't financial analysis. A trained analyst could look at data and make an educated guess. A good one maybe. But this was something else. This was someone who knew exactly where the floor was and exactly when it was going to give way, and told me with the calm certainty of a person reading something that had already happened. The question I'd been circling since the registry, since the porridge, since the lobby, it finally formed itself into words in my head. Who did I marry? She was in the kitchen when I got home. Same as every evening now, which still felt strange. The flat having a heartbeat, lights on, something warm on the stove. I set my bag down and stood in the doorway and looked at her for a moment. The stocks, I said. She didn't turn around. They crashed exactly like you said. I know that's not analysis. She set down the spatula and turned off the burner, turned around, looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Not guilty, not defensive, waiting maybe to see what I'd do with the information. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Tell me something true. She considered that for a moment. Then she came and sat across from me. And for the first time since the registry, she didn't have the careful composure fully in place. She looked tired. Not weak, just tired. The way people look when they've been holding something at arm's length for a very long time. May is my younger sister. She said, you already know that. I know that. What you don't know, what I need you to keep to yourself for now, is anything beyond that. She met my eyes steadily. I left my life to come here. There's a situation at home I'm not ready to go back to. I need some time and I need to stay quiet. If people start asking questions about who I am, my family, my background, I need you to say you're still getting to know each other, which isn't even a lie. I looked at her. What situation? She was quiet for a moment. Then my father wants me to merge with a man I've never chosen. A business arrangement dressed up as a marriage. His name is Lu Kong. She said the name like it tasted like nothing. I've spent 12 years building something.
He'd walk into half of it on the day we signed the papers.
I'm not doing it. So, you married a stranger instead.
I married someone who needed a way out of something, too. She tilted her head slightly.
It seemed fair. I thought about that. And your family? Do they know where you are? My father knows I left. He doesn't know the details yet. A pause. He will soon. I wanted to ask more.
There was a wall she'd built around a very specific part of the picture, and I could feel exactly where it started and stopped. But I thought about the look on her face when May had called her the substitute. The way loneliness had flickered in her eyes for 1 second before composure closed back over it, and I decided some walls get knocked down on their own timetable.
Okay, I said. She looked at me. Okay, I won't ask questions. You're not ready to answer and I won't tell anyone anything.
I leaned back in the chair.
You kept your end of the deal. You stood in front of me yesterday when you didn't have to. That counts.
She was quiet for a moment and then something in her face changed.
Something so small I almost missed it.
A loosening like a knot that had been pulled tight for a very long time and just gave a fraction of an inch.
Your sister, she said softly, always had people around her. Friends, attention, someone in her corner.
You, she stopped, started again.
Who stood in front of you before yesterday? The answer to that question was a long silence. No one, I said finally.
She nodded like that was what she'd expected, like she already knew.
And that was the thing about Lon.
She had a way of knowing things she shouldn't. Seeing things she hadn't been told, understanding what was underneath before you'd opened your mouth. Part of it was the financial mind, the pattern recognition, the ability to look at a system and find the thing that didn't fit. But part of it was something else, something more like recognition.
She'd been the one in the family they depended on.
The one who held things together, built things, fixed things, not the one they loved. I think she'd spent a long time understanding people who were overlooked because she was one.
I was still thinking about that when my phone rang. My mother. I knew before I answered. I'd been expecting it for days. The way you expect rain when the air pressure drops. You don't know exactly when, just that it's coming and it won't be comfortable. Song Kai. Her voice was clipped the way it got when she was performing patience she didn't have. I've heard things.
Bring this woman home this weekend.
Your father and I want to see her face. It wasn't an invitation. I hung up and looked at Lon across the table. My parents want to meet you, I said. She pushed her glasses up. Of course they do. She didn't look worried. She looked like a woman who had walked into difficult rooms her entire life and knew exactly how to walk out of them. I was the one who was worried. We brought gifts. Lon picked them out.
A good liquor for my father, a health supplement set for my mother, wrapped neatly without being showy. I noticed she knew exactly what kind of people they were before she'd ever met them.
I didn't ask how.
My parents' apartment was the kind of place where every surface had a purpose, and every purpose was on display. My mother was already sitting on the sofa when we walked in, back straight, arms folded, wearing the expression she reserved for situations she'd already decided were beneath her. My father stood by the window with a cigarette and said nothing, which with him meant the same thing. Dad, Mom, this is Lon, I said.
Hello, Uncle. Hello, Auntie, Lon smiled.
Easy, unhurried, a smile that gave nothing away. My mother's eyes moved over her the way a customs officer goes through a bag, looking for the thing that didn't belong. Where are you from? She said, no greeting back.
I'm local, Lon said. My family runs a small business. What kind of business? Various things. Import-export, some holdings.
My mother filed that under nothing and moved on.
You're not working right now. I'm between positions at the moment. Between positions?
My mother repeated it like she was tasting something sour.
So, you have no income. I have savings. Savings?
Another taste sourer this time. And you think that's enough to come into my son's house and live off him while you figure out what you want to do with yourself?
Mom, I'm talking to her. She waved a hand at me without looking away from Lon. A woman your age, no job, no family background you can name. You really think I don't know what this is? My son is a good man.
A steady job, a flat, a future that's very attractive to a certain kind of person.
The room went quiet.
I felt the heat rising up through my chest.
Lon didn't flinch.
She sat with her hands rested in her lap and met my mother's gaze with something that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite patience. It was more like the expression of someone watching a very small storm from inside a very solid building. "Auntie," she said calmly.
"I understand why you have concerns. It's only natural. I'd feel the same way in your position." My mother blinked.
She'd expected either tears or defiance, and Lon had given her neither.
Dinner was worse.
My mother kept at it through every dish.
A comment about the apartment, a remark about Lan's clothes, a question about her parents framed as an insult.
Each one landed and dissolved like water on stone.
Lon answered what was worth answering and let the rest pass in silence.
But I watched her eyes and I saw what she was too composed to show anywhere else.
A quiet, steady loneliness.
The look of someone who had spent a lifetime being valued for what she could do and tolerated for what she was. It was the same look I'd seen in the car the night we left the registry.
Then my mother's phone rang.
She glanced at the screen and answered it without excusing herself. Right there at the table.
"May." "Yes, we're eating." He brought her home.
She leaned back in her chair, lowering her voice by exactly nothing.
"Not much to look at. No job. Won't say what her family does." "Yes. Honestly, I think you're right. I don't know what he was thinking." "It's you. We know. It's you. We trust you." I went completely still. I knew who was on that phone and across the table. So did Lon. I watched her face. Not a flicker, not a tremor. She lifted her teacup and took a quiet sip, and only I was close enough to see the exact moment her jaw set just slightly behind the calm. My mother was on the phone with her own son's wife's younger sister, telling her the woman sitting at her dinner table was a nobody, and she had absolutely no idea. Yes, I'll talk to him. You just come over next week. We haven't seen you in so long." "Enough."
My voice came out harder than I'd planned. My mother stopped mid-sentence.
My father looked up from his bowl. "Kai," I said, "enough."
I put down my chopsticks.
"Lon is my wife.
She is sitting at this table in your home, and you are on the phone discussing her like she's a problem to be solved.
That's done now."
My mother's face went red.
"Don't you raise your voice at me. I am your mother and I am telling you this woman is not right for you. You don't know anything about her."
I know she stood in front of me when no one else did.
I pushed my chair back and stood up.
I know she has never once treated me like something she could pick up and put down when it suited her. And I know I'm not sitting here while you insult her.
I looked at Lon. "Let's go."
She stood without a word. Said a quiet, composed goodbye to my father, who had the decency to look uncomfortable. My mother was still talking when I closed the door behind us. In the car, neither of us spoke for a long time.
I drove and let the city move past us.
And at some point, I glanced over and saw her looking out the window with her face turned away from me.
I pulled over. "Lon," she turned.
There was a small brightness at the corner of her eye that she hadn't quite managed to contain. I reached over without thinking and wiped it away with my thumb. "Sorry," I said, "for all of it.
That table, that phone call, all of it."
She shook her head slightly.
"Don't be sorry. Just don't change your mind." "I chose this," I said. "Whatever it costs, I'm not changing my mind."
She looked at me for a long moment, then she nodded once and turned back to the window.
I pulled back onto the road and didn't say anything else.
Some things don't need more words than that. The next morning, I arrived at work to find a new project brief on my desk.
A major partnership, a large-scale investment negotiation, high stakes, tight timeline.
The partnering company was listed at the top of the brief, the Shin Group. I read the name twice and felt something I couldn't name settle in my stomach. I was about to spend the next 2 weeks trying to impress a company that belonged to my wife's family, and I had absolutely no idea. The project had been dying for 2 weeks, and everyone on the team knew it. The Shin Group's representative, a woman in her 30s named Miss Han, had a reputation in our industry, the way certain weather systems do. You heard she was coming and you started moving things indoors. She had rejected every draft our team produced, each time with a different incision. The projections were too optimistic.
The risk model was soft.
The strategy lacked coherence. Our department head had stopped making eye contact with people in the corridor. Everyone was staying late and coming in early and producing work that kept getting sent back with a single line of feedback that somehow managed to be both precise and withering.
I was no different.
I had 13 tabs open, a cold cup of tea I'd forgotten about, and a plan I'd rewritten so many times it had stopped making sense to me. I was still at my desk at 11 o'clock when Lon appeared in the study doorway holding a cup of hot milk. She looked at my screen for a moment, then she pushed her glasses up. "You're solving the wrong problem," she said.
I leaned back. What? Your whole approach? She set the milk down and leaned forward,
scanning the screen with the expression she got when she was reading something that disappointed her. You've built this around short-term returns, high yield, fast turnaround, aggressive projections.
You think that's what they want because it looks impressive. She straightened up. It isn't. They want stability.
Long horizon returns they can defend to their board in 5 years. You've been showing them a sports car when they asked for a vault.
The room went quiet enough that I could hear the building settling.
And this, she pointed at a chart in the corner of the screen.
Your risk model. It's too clean.
Anyone who knows what they're looking at will see you've smoothed the variance.
Miss Han will see it in 30 seconds.
I stared at the chart. I had spent 4 hours on that chart. So, the whole thing needs a different foundation.
Yes.
She picked up a scrap of paper from beside the keyboard, a delivery receipt, the back of it blank, and started writing. Not slowly, fast, decisive, her handwriting small and clear, numbers and frameworks appearing on the paper like she was transcribing something she'd already worked out in full somewhere else. After 6 minutes, she set the pen down and pushed the paper toward me.
I looked at it.
It was the most elegant solution I'd ever seen for a problem I'd been losing sleep over for 2 weeks.
Bold enough to be interesting, rigorous enough to be airtight, framed entirely around what the partner actually wanted.
There was a structure in the middle section I would never have arrived at on my own. Not in 2 weeks, not in 2 months.
How did you? I started. Get some coffee. She said, you have a long night. She was right. I worked until 4 o'clock in the morning, rebuilding everything from her framework up. Every time I hit a wall, I looked at that scrap of paper and found a way through. By the time I submitted it at 8 the next morning, hands unsteady from no sleep and too much caffeine, I had made something I was actually proud of. Ms. Han called the meeting for 2 o'clock.
I sat across from her in the conference room while she read. She turned pages without expression. The rest of my team sat very still.
The clock on the wall was the loudest thing in the building. She reached the last page, looked up.
Who built this? She asked.
My department head pointed at me. She studied me for a moment. The look of someone recalibrating. The entry point is original. The risk framework is honest.
She closed the document.
This is what we were waiting for. We can move forward. The room exhaled as one.
The company arranged a banquet that evening.
Private room, good food. The kind of relief that turns into noise quickly.
My department head clapped me on the shoulder so many times I'd be bruised in the morning. I smiled and raised my glass and said the right things.
And in the back of my mind, I thought about a delivery receipt covered in handwriting sitting on my desk at home.
Midway through the evening, a door at the back of the room opened.
And our company's CEO walked in accompanied by a man I didn't recognize.
Older, impeccably dressed, the kind of stillness about him that comes not from calmness, but from authority, a man who moved at his own pace because every room adjusted to him. Our CEO introduced him as Old Fong, Senior Executive Director of the Shin Group.
Here to mark the partnership. We stood. We bowed.
He nodded and moved through the room, and something about his gaze as it swept the table made the back of my neck feel cold, though I couldn't have explained why. A short while later, my phone buzzed.
Lon. I stepped half away from the table and answered quietly. You're not back yet, she said. Still at the banquet. Might be another hour. Don't wait up. Have you eaten properly? I'm at a banquet. That isn't what I asked. A pause. Drink less. I almost smiled. Noted.
I hung up and turned back to the table and stopped. Old Fong was looking at me, not at the room.
At me.
His expression had changed into something I couldn't read, something tight and urgent underneath the surface composure.
Your wife called?
He said.
Yes, sorry. She worries. Her name?
His voice was careful.
Too careful. What is her name? I frowned slightly. Shenlong. The teacup in his hand slipped. It hit the edge of the table and shattered on the floor. Nobody moved.
Old Fong was completely still, staring at me with an expression that had gone somewhere past shock into something raw. Something that didn't belong on a man who probably hadn't let his face do anything unplanned in 20 years.
Miss Shun, he said, barely above a breath.
And then, to no one in the room, to himself, to some disbelief he was trying to hold together.
What is she doing? An hour later, I walked into my own flat with Old Fong behind me.
Lon came out of the kitchen at the sound of the door, still in her home clothes, still in her glasses, a dish towel over one shoulder. She saw him, and whatever composure she'd built up since the day we met, the wall, the ice, the measured distance she kept between herself and everything, cracked quietly at the edges, not with fear, with something more like being caught. Old Fong crossed the room in 4 steps and bowed, not a polite nod. A real bow, deep and deliberate, the bow of a man who had spent decades in service to one family and was looking at the person who stood at the top of it. "Miss Shin," he said, his voice unsteady for the first time.
"Why are you suffering here?"
The dish towel slipped off her shoulder.
I stood in my own entryway and looked at my wife. My wife who made
porridge and predicted stock crashes and rewrote failing proposals in the margins of delivery receipts and understood for the first time that I had no idea what I had married into.
None at all. Old Fong left close to midnight. I don't know everything they said to each other.
They spoke in the kitchen for a long time while I sat in the living room and waited.
And some conversations aren't yours to hear. What I understood when it was over was the shape of it.
Shinlan was Mei's older sister, the way a person can be related to someone and still be nothing like them. She was the Shin family's first daughter, the one who had spent 12 years building the Shin Group from a mid-sized firm into something that made people stand up straighter when they heard the name, acting CEO in her parents' absence. The axis everything else in that family turned on, except the family's affection which had always gone to Mei. She had come to that registry deliberately.
Fong had said as much before he left, equal parts baffled and admiring.
She had heard about what happened to me, her sister doing her family's mess, a man left publicly humiliated twice in a row, and she had gone to fix it in the only way that made complete and immediate sense to her.
She had a problem she needed solved. I had a problem I needed solved. She was at a registry. So was I.
That was what she told herself, I think.
I'm not sure she entirely believed it.
After Fong left, we sat in the living room for a long time and didn't say much. Eventually, she looked at me over the top of her glasses with an expression I'd come to recognize. The one that meant she had already decided something and was now simply informing the world.
"I know how this looks," she said. "It looks like you knew everything about me from day one and let me believe you were a stranger."
"Yes, and the cooking, the porridge, the stocks. Yes, the proposal. That one I did for you, not for the Shin Group." She paused, though it helped us both, which felt appropriate. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had walked into a registry with her household register and a plan, who had made me breakfast and predicted a market crash and rewritten a dying project on the back of a delivery receipt, who had stood in front of me in a lobby when she had no obligation to, and stood in front of me at a dinner table when it cost her something to do it. "When you said you felt at ease with me," I said, "was that true, or was that also part of the calculation?" She took a breath, set her glasses on the table. "You were angry when my mother treated me badly," she said quietly.
"You stood up without thinking about what it would cost you. You said I chose this and you meant it." A pause. "I have been useful to my family my entire life. I have never been chosen by anyone simply because they wanted me there."
She looked at me steadily.
"With you for the first time, I feel like I can just exist. No performance, no use, just exist, and that is enough."
She stopped then in a tone that was as close to vulnerable as I had ever heard from her. "I want to take this marriage seriously. I would like to give us a real chance.
Are you willing?"
I looked at her, this sharp, impossible, purple-haired woman who had upended my entire life and made me the best porridge I'd ever tasted and apparently also ran a multi-billion yuan enterprise in her spare time.
"You cook too well," I said. "I can't find a reason to divorce."
She stared at me.
Then she laughed.
The real one, the one that crinkled her eyes behind where her glasses had been, and for the first time, the flat felt entirely warm. After that, she stopped hiding.
She became my open advisor. No more scrap paper in the study. No more careful distance.
She would simply sit beside me, point at the problem, and tell me what to do about it. I began to understand that the stock prediction and the proposal weren't flukes. She saw patterns in things the way other people see furniture, just there, obvious, taking up space. I also began to understand that not everyone was happy about our marriage. Lu Kong was waiting for me outside my office building 3 days later. I'd heard the name before, the arranged suitor, the business alliance her father wanted. In person, he was exactly what I expected. A Porsche at the curb, a suit that announced itself before he did, and the easy contempt of a man who had never been told no by anything that mattered.
Song Kai. He looked me over the way you'd look at a wrong answer. "I'll make this simple." He held out an envelope. Inside was a check. More money than I made in 2 years.
Take it. Walk away from the Shin family. Go back to whatever you were doing before.
I looked at the check, then at him. You think that's what she is to me? I said. A family to marry into, isn't it? She is my wife, I said.
And you're a man she chose not to marry, standing on a pavement trying to buy me off because you can't understand why.
I stepped past him. That's a you problem.
He grabbed my shoulder. The punch landed before I'd fully decided to throw it, clean, hard, to the side of his face, and Lu Kong hit the side of his own car on the way down with a sound that was almost satisfying.
It was the first time in my life I had hit someone. I did not regret it. May's move came the same week, quieter, and more calculated.
She flooded every group chat we shared, colleagues, mutual friends. The neighborhood, with a version of events in which I had abandoned a devoted girlfriend for a rich woman, and was now living off the Shin family as a kept man, too cowardly to admit it. She wrote it with the conviction of someone who had rehearsed it. And people who had spent years watching me be the reliable, unambitious one, found it easy enough to believe.
I came home furious.
Lon was already on the phone. Full financials on the Lu conglomerate, she said in the tone she used when she was ending something. Every subsidiary, I want the tax filings for the last 5 years cross-referenced.
Send it to me tonight. She hung up, picked up the second phone on the table. Get the legal department.
I need a defamation letter drafted for a private individual.
Yes, tonight. She set both phones down and looked up at me.
Your hand, she said.
I held it out.
She turned it over, examined the knuckles, pressed 2 fingers against the bruised ones with a gentleness completely at odds with the phone call she just made.
Lu Kong, she asked. He grabbed me first. I know. A pause. Good. We looked at each other and something settled between us.
The quiet, solid thing that forms between two people who have decided without ceremony that they are on the same side. No panic, no scrambling, just 2 people who trusted each other completely, standing in a small flat taking apart the people who had come for them. When it was done, she set her phone face down on the table. There's one more thing, she said.
I waited. My father has been patient. He won't be much longer. She met my eyes. It's time for you to meet him.
The way she said it, steady and just slightly careful, told me that meeting him was not a formality. It was the final test.
The machinery Lon set in motion worked quickly and without mercy.
Within a week, the Lu conglomerate was under full tax investigation.
3 subsidiaries flagged in the first pass, 2 more by the end of the second. Lu Kang's lawyers put out statements. The statements only drew more attention.
His cash flow seized up the way ice forms fast on water. By the end of the month, he was fielding calls from creditors instead of business partners, and the Porsche disappeared from outside his office building.
May's collapse was quieter, but more complete.
The lawyer's letter from the Shin Group's legal department arrived at her workplace on a Tuesday. By Friday, she had been dismissed on the grounds of reputational damage to the company. The rumors she'd spread had her name on them, and the Shin Group's name had a way of making people read the fine print very carefully. She was blacklisted before the month was out. No respectable firm would touch her. At work, the shift in atmosphere was instantaneous and a little nauseating. The same colleagues who had exchanged looks over my head were now finding reasons to stop by my desk. June watched all of it from a safe distance and summed it up in 4 words when I passed him in the corridor.
Fence sitters, everyone. I didn't disagree.
My parents showed up on a Saturday with more bags than 2 people needed to carry and expressions that had made a complete and unrecognizable journey from the last time I'd seen them. My mother held Lan's hands in both of hers and called her Lon Lon with an affection that gave me secondhand embarrassment. She said she hadn't been thinking clearly, that she'd been taken in by the wrong people, that she hoped Lon could find it in her heart to let an old woman's foolishness go. My father stood beside her and nodded along, and had the good grace to look ashamed. Lon accepted it warmly, without conditions, without digging up a single thing that had been said at that dinner table. She thanked them for coming, returned their gifts with better ones, and served tea as if none of it had happened. After they left, walking out the door, still praising her to each other, I looked at her.
You didn't have to be that gracious, I said.
She stacked the teacups.
They're your parents. As long as they treat you well from now on, there's nothing to hold on to.
I thought about how long she must have practiced that, releasing things, making space. Chairman Shin's estate was the kind of place that reminded you quietly and without apology that money on a certain scale stops looking like money and starts looking like landscape. He met us in a study lined with the evidence of 50 years of decisions.
He didn't ask about my background or my salary.
He didn't ask how we'd met or make small talk designed to assess me. He simply opened a folder and placed it on the desk in front of me. Cross-border merger, he said. The other party has refused 3 of our teams. They have a reputation for being immovable. He looked at me with eyes that had seen through a great deal of cleverness in their time. 3 days. I want the contract signed. I don't care how you get there. He didn't say what would happen if I didn't. He didn't need to. For 3 days, Lon and I worked side by side at the kitchen table until long past midnight. But she was careful about the line. She briefed me. She questioned me. She made me argue my own positions back to her until they held up. She didn't do it for me. At one point, she put her pen down and said, "You know what to do. Stop looking for permission." Then she made tea and went to bed. On the 3rd morning, she pressed her hand flat against my chest before I left. The way you checked that something was still standing. There's a discrepancy in their Q3 filing, she said quietly. Receivables that don't reconcile. I mentioned it 2 nights ago. Don't forget it's there. I didn't forget. The negotiating team across the table was 6 people who had made careers out of saying no. They came in relaxed and methodical. They'd done this before, worn out 3 teams already, knew exactly how long they could wait. I worked through the framework calmly, answered the rebuttals I'd prepared for, kept my nerve through the first 2 hours. When we hit the wall and we hit it hard, their lead negotiator folding his hands and letting silence make his argument for him, I set down my pen. Before we continue, I said, I'd like to talk about your Q3 receivables reconciliation. Specifically the gap between reported and actual on pages 41 and 44. The silence changed quality. An hour later, we had a contract. Chairman Shin was waiting on the terrace. The sun was going down over the gardens, and he stood with his hands behind his back, looking at something in the middle distance that had nothing to do with the view. I assumed you were another Lu Kang, he said without turning around. A man who looked at my daughter and saw the easiest way across a distance he couldn't otherwise cross. He paused. I watched you during these 3 days. You never used her name in that room. You never leaned on what she is. You walked in with your own work and you walked out with a contract. He turned. She told me that with you she is at ease. I didn't understand what she meant until now. He extended his hand. My daughter chose a good man, he said. From now on, she's entrusted to you. I shook his hand and didn't say much because the moment didn't need it. That night back in our flat, I sat at the kitchen table while Lon poured tea. She didn't ask how it went. She'd already known it would. Sorry it took this long, I said. For things to be right. She set the cup in front of me and looked at me over the top of her glasses. You have terrible timing, she said. But you always arrive. We saw them only once more by accident. Lon and I were walking through a shopping district on a quiet afternoon when I saw Lu Kang behind the wheel of a car, waiting in a drop-off lane while a woman he wasn't married to climbed out of the back seat without acknowledging him. He saw us through the windscreen. Neither of us waved. Further on, near the entrance of a luxury store, a woman in cheap work clothes was handing out flyers to passing shoppers. It took me a moment to recognize May. The hair dull, the eyes tired, a version of herself pressed down to something smaller and more essential. She looked up and saw us. Saw Lan's hand in mine. Saw the way I was looking at her. The way I suppose a person looks at someone they have simply stopped thinking about. She turned away and disappeared into the crowd. I watched her go and felt nothing except something quiet and final. The way a door sounds when it closes properly for the first time. The wedding was Lan's idea. She said our beginning deserved a ceremony that matched it. Not the quick bureaucratic paper marriage, but a real wedding. We chose a lawn by the sea on a bright afternoon in early spring. She walked toward me through an arch of white flowers in a dress that caught the light, and I stood at the end of the aisle and felt my throat tighten in a way I hadn't been prepared for. I took her hand and I said, I thought a stranger had saved me the day you walked up behind me at that registry. I spent a long time being wrong about the stranger part, but I was never wrong about the saving. She smiled and it was the real one, the soft smile that crinkled her eyes. You gave me a home, she said. That was all I needed. Everything else was already mine. We kissed in front of everyone we knew, and the sea wind swept over the lawn, carrying the salt of the ocean far out to the water. The red marriage certificate that had burned hot like a branding iron in my palm the day we first got it was framed and hung on our living room wall at home. It looked different now, no longer a sudden desperate fix, but a beginning that had slowly bloomed into what it was always meant to be.
Sincerity and kindness are lessons I learned from her. They do not always arrive on schedule.
They take the long road, the wrong door, a rushed 10-minute marriage in a government civil affairs building with a woman who already knew every hidden part of your heart. But they are never absent.
No matter how messy the start, they always arrive, gentle and permanent in the end.